Hi, everybody, and thanks for tuning in. John Kelly, profiler here, and welcome. Welcome to today's show. We're going to be drilling down on Bryan Kohberger. We're very interested in the DNA. Oh, we got autism going here. I mean, we've got blondes. We've got a man that could be enraged at blondes. We're going to tell you why. And our investigator, Pam Bogart, welcome, Pam. Honor to
Hi,
have
John.
you. Honor to have you.
Thank you, John.
Our investigator, Pam Bogart, she dug right down deep, all the way down to why he could have a lot of rage at blonde women. Okay, so hang with this. This is going to be interesting. Good work, Pam. Also, too, this is my book, Discovering Lazarus. I want to thank you all for all the great comments. I appreciate it very, very much. Thanks for all your purchases. Really, again, I can't thank you enough for all you've done. And this is the story of John Kelly, the good, the bad, and the ugly. How I came from being a severe cocaine addict and moved on to do volunteer work, become a counselor, become a therapist, and eventually a profiler. So being able to kick a drug habit, and if I could do it, you could do it. And I was able to climb right up the ladder after giving up drugs. The other thing I want to tell you is we have another channel. You want to go to it. It's very informative, filled with chock full of education on substance abuse and addictive illness, which we know addictive illness is the biggest serial killer throughout the country, especially with fentanyl. We know that. So please feel free to go to John Kelly's Thrive, John Kelly's Thrive, and you'll get all the education you need or want or are looking for on drug addiction. And if you don't, let us know. Okay. So anyway, with all that being said, let's get back to our show. And Mr. Kohberger here, you got to understand he is totally innocent until proven guilty in a court of law. Some people don't like that explanation, but I don't know what else to tell you. He's not guilty, until he's found innocent. Maybe it's a play on words. I don't know. But all I know is we've always said he's innocent until proven guilty. Okay. That's the way the law is here. I mean, the way I understand it anyway. But we always love your feedback and comments. Please do it. Please give us a like if you like us, and think about subscribing. We'll keep you entertained. I guarantee you. We have some interesting thinking that goes on here, right, Pam? Pam,
Right.
when we look at this DNA and these three types of DNA, you worked in the courts, right? I mean, do you
hmm
think that'll gain any traction anywhere in when the trial takes place? I
Now,
mean,
are you
what's your
talking
view
about the
on it?
you talking about the recent DNA, John, under
Yeah,
the
yeah, yeah.
lady's fingernails?
The recent
Yeah.
DNA, or please talk about the other DNA too, if you want. Whatever you
Right.
want to talk about.
Well, the most recent one, it's interesting because it's kind of said it was inconclusive. Am I correct?
Or
That Yeah, right. They couldn't really his DNA. They didn't think it was there. I mean, however, as you and I have discussed, he was completely covered. I mean, so my thoughts are, why would it be there? And
Mhm.
and sure, she could have a lot of DNA under her fingernails because her and Kelly were out partying that night, and they came in touch with a lot of people. And they also were in the same bed together, right?
Mhm.
Hanging out. So they were close like that. And I don't, it doesn't bother me that his DNA is not there because, like I said, from everything I've read, he was, the only thing that was exposed on him was his eyes. He had gloves
Mhm.
on. He had like a dark suit on that went, not a suit, but you know what I mean, like a bodysuit type thing that went all the way down. So he everything was covered up. So she couldn't have grabbed any skin anyway. So um, those are my thoughts. What are yours, John?
Yeah, I totally believe that. And when you talk about the gloves, you say some people say, "Well, how do you know he had gloves on?" Well, I have to believe 99% he had gloves on, okay? Because every other part of him, seemed to be covered up. The guy that was leaving anyway, right?
Mhm.
Whether it was Kohberger or wasn't Kohberger, seemed to be covered up completely. And all the woman saw or the girl saw was his bushy eyebrows, and he's carrying a vacuum of some
Yeah,
sort, some kind of vacuum.
right.
And that kind of jumps out at me. But what really tells the tale to me is it never came out in probable cause, maybe it will, that they ever found any fingerprints on the knife sheet. They found DNA on the knife sheet, but they never found any fingerprints on the knife sheet. Well, what does that tell you? Right? That tells you he had to have gloves on. Whoever the
Right.
killer was had to have gloves on, because how could he maneuver that knife sheet without gloves and without leaving fingerprints if he didn't have gloves on, right?
Well, also, wouldn't it, I mean, I think he probably had a certain type too of glove, a heavier glove, because if you're doing that much attacking, wouldn't your hands have some kind of cuts on them and stuff? From, like, wouldn't there be some sort of, I don't think he could escape getting, cut up a little bit himself, right?
Well, I have to believe you're correct that he had
Yeah.
heavier gloves on. Whoever the killer was had heavier gloves on, was really buttoned up, really tightened up, and everything. Because in a lot of the cases, as you know, that we've worked with, okay,
Mhm.
they do get cut. Okay, the killer does get cut, and some of his blood ends up mixed with the victim's blood, or they'll
Right,
find it separately. But
right.
usually they do get cut too. So I have to believe, especially if it is Kohberger, and again, I can't say it is definitely yet, but if it is him, I mean, he would know enough to do this
Right.
because of all the courses he's taken through criminal justice and other criminology courses that he's taken. You know, I mean, he does have a master's, right, in criminal justice, correct? So,
Right.
I mean, he knows the deal.
Well, he
He
was,
knows the deal.
I think he even taught a class, right? Wasn't he teaching a
Well,
class?
yeah, he was teaching up there, definitely.
Mhm.
Yeah, and wasn't doing so well with the students and everything, and socially getting along with them. Like there was a break in the relationship he was having with them. But think about this. He claims the other day he's autistic, right? So that would answer a lot of questions
Yeah,
about his socialization through
yeah, the
his
social awkwardness, yeah.
yeah, and talking to not only women but even the students he was teaching up there. Although he seemed they seemed to think he had more of a problem relating to women uh, than he did with males in
Mhm.
that class up there. A harder time with females than males. What do you think about that whole autistic thing? You think that'll keep him off, death row or the firing squad or whatever they have in mind?
Well, I think it might. I mean, I kind of do, because it's almost like someone, well, I mean, most people are mentally ill that do this, right? I mean, there is a mental illness. But yeah, I think there'll probably be, I don't want to say sympathy towards him, but like, that is a factor that I think they would consider, the jury, if they're the ones that,
And and it is a factor that they
yeah,
will consider. I mean, there's no question about it. But I think it's important for the public and our viewers to know that just because you have Asperger's, autism, whatever piece of it you got, wherever you are on that spectrum, I think the bottom line is to realize that because you have one disorder does not mean you do not have another disorder, right? And that comorbidity, okay, or a couple other disorders, because that comorbidity, I believe, exists. If he's the killer in this case, I believe it could exist big time, and that there's a number of different disorders because you can have problems with the spectrum and be on the spectrum, the autism spectrum, and have problems with Asperger's. And the vast majority of people with autism, vast majority, 100%, not 100%, but really close to 100%. I mean, they're not going to hurt anybody. They're not going to become violent, right? They'll whatever they do, they do. But really, you don't see a lot of it. But every now and then, you get a person that has some type of autism, and they can go off, they can blow up because they're carrying around this internal rage. Could be depression, could be anxiety, could be whatever, could be antisocial personality. So I don't know what is going on. Okay. We know that just off the top of my head, that Bryan Kohberger has a history of theft. We know he has a history of heroin use, right? You and I know from all the years we spent in the fields, right? That,
Mhm.
Heroin addicts usually steal. Yeah, I mean, that's
Mhm.
symptomatic of the illness, of addictive
Right.
illness. I mean, they usually do. That's part of it. Got to have money to buy your drugs, right? And the dealer doesn't want to know about giving you too much credit. He wants his money, right? But the point I'm trying to make is that anything is possible. Anything is possible with this, and you can have these various disorders going on, and this rage. I mean, you got to understand that when you look at Adam Lanza, I mean, he killed 20,
Right.
20 first graders.
Yep.
He just killed them. Okay. So this rage can build up. And we also know there's kind of this ritualistic obsessions that go on with these folks. Another disorder, obsessive compulsive disorder, or obsession over something, doing something like cleaning or putting things in, the right place, or putting them in the, where it needs to be. Everything needs to be in order. Okay. So you have to understand that, there's different things that go on here. And when you're looking at the killer here, or if you're thinking the possibility that the suspect is the killer here, I mean, you know, you could see a like major concern with cleaning and cleaning up and whatever, and maybe it was just covering the crime. But I heard he's been pretty compulsive or obsessive, and compulsive about cleaning, and supposedly leaving with some kind of vac from the crime scene. Because the other thing that's always bothered me, what happened to the knife? We got
Right.
the sheet over here. We got a bloody knife over here, dripping of blood or whatever. What did you do with the blood that was on that knife? Where did it go? Did it go in this suit? Or did it go in this vacuum cleaner? How was it carried out of the house?
Right.
How is that bloody knife carried out of the house?
Well,
The
I
sheets
mean,
were clears.
I would have thought he would have got rid of all the clothing on. He probably had like, clothing underneath. If he had one of those suits on, that he probably just took that off and everything else and discarded that and the knife on the way home. Because I think it took him with the tracking of his phone. Didn't it take him a long time to get home?
Oh yeah, he was traveling around for a long time.
Yeah, right. So who knows where he was, right?
Yeah, and what's interesting, I was watching a journalist, an investigative journalist, on there the other night, and he was going on about the route that Bryan Kohberger said he took that night while he was looking at the stars, gazing at the stars, and enjoying the evening, right?
Right.
And the guy said, which we knew already, it was like the darkest highway he was ever on in his life. This investigative journalist, he's not from up in Washington or Idaho.
Right.
And he said when he took it and followed the route that Kohberger said he followed, he got to the park, but where Kohberger liked to go, but the park was closed. And his big fence came down, was down when he got there, and you
Mhm.
couldn't drive through it. So he had to turn around and come back. So I don't know if that's part of his alibi for being alone and driving around looking at the stars and driving right through the park, because according to this investigative journalist, he couldn't have gotten into the park. So he may have set himself up for some more problems there. I don't know. We don't know. We're going to have to wait and see, And the other thing with autism too, just because somebody's autistic doesn't mean they're not intelligent.
Of course.
All right. I mean, come on, take a look at what we have. I mean, we've got Musk running around who claims he's got some autism, right? I
Mhm.
mean, at least that's what it said in the article. I mean, I just think there's and I've worked with doctors, now that I think about it, who had Asperger's, from various pharmaceutical companies, and usually they head towards, if they're usually gifted, if they're really smart, they're gifted in a lot of ways. They usually head towards math and science.
Mhm.
That's the feelings. They have very low empathy, low feelings rate kind of people, and or no feelings, depending. But yet they are very, very astute when it comes to math or science, things that are more visual in that part of the brain that you would use for math and science, which I don't have.
Right.
But they would get focused. The focus is, you know, um, on their work, on their research. They're usually very, very smart, very successful. But when it comes to interacting with other people, they have a social deficit, even when it comes to family members. They can have that social deficit. And that's how we ended up seeing various families over the years.
I wonder, I mean, when this was determined that he was autistic, was this, a recent revelation, or was this something that was known for, you know, since he was young?
Well, see, the situation there is, I think you'd have to say progression, because you can't really diagnose somebody
Hmm.
um, in their teens, with the hormones running and everything.
Right,
To get a clear, good diagnosis, you're going to have
right.
to wait till they're usually about 18 to get a solid diagnosis. I mean, if there's
Mhm.
something really, looking at you out there and staring in the face and saying, I'm really, ADHD material, and that's just the way it is. I suffer from that. I mean, you know, or bipolar or something could, but really, you're not going to get a really good idea. You can't really, give it a really good confirmation unless they're usually 18 and you gotten through some of that crazy adolescence, that crazy adolescent hormonal period, you
Plus,
know.
he was using drugs in high school, right towards
Well,
the
see,
yeah,
that's
yeah,
the other
yeah.
thing too. You can't. You're not going to get a good read. You
Right.
got somebody strung out on drugs. There's no way you're going to get a real good idea of if they're suffering from any kind of mental illness, like depression, anxiety, or um, anything at all, like Asperger's or autism is very hard, because there's certain tests they have to go through to really define that, especially autism,
Hmm.
and that's almost impossible to have a clear test, a nice, fresh, clear test that you can score. If you're using heroin or other drugs.
Hmm.
So, yeah, you're absolutely correct. Absolutely correct. Um, the other thing is, when we take a look at the rage, the rage inside, you researched and found a situation where he was shamed and made fun of at a very early age
Mhm.
by a girl young girl he wanted to go to school with. Both of them were young, and he wanted to be her boyfriend. I guess he wrote her notes or whatever, stuff like that. And kids can be cruel, you know. Really, they're not thinking wholly with a whole conscience that early in life, right? But anyway, you brought out that she was blonde,
Right.
right?
It was, yeah, it was an article that I read early on. Yeah. That,
Yeah,
mhm.
and he was pretty hurt by that. And then I'm looking all these years later, because we know how you carry this stuff from childhood, this trauma,
Mhm.
right? And all these years later, and then I'm seeing Maddie, who's blonde, and
Mhm.
she looks like the target to me.
Mhm. Me
And then
too.
we have Kaylee, who happened to be there too. She's blonde. So I
Mhm.
got to believe this was blonde focused.
Mhm.
This was a blonde focused murder. And that was the color of his preferred woman, girl of choice's hair. He liked blonde girls, blonde women. Okay.
Yeah, this was, yeah,
And
it was, go ahead.
I think that if in fact he is the killer, he could have spent time outside in the back of that house watching those
For
blondes.
sure. But don't you think he could have like seen them in another spot? You know what I mean? Not necessarily, spoke with them, but I
Mhm.
mean, like, I know that the Mad Greek doesn't want to, has said that that didn't happen in there, that they didn't, see each other. Maddie or, Xana both worked in there, but I don't know. I mean, if he did go in there, I would have thought he would have come in contact with Maddie if she was working, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. If in fact he was in there, but
Yeah.
also the obsession, um, if he's the killer, again, he's innocent until proven guilty. The obsession that it can be really kind of produced with a couple of these different disorders. Um, a lot of people with autism have certain obsessions, but then we have a lot of people with antisocial personality disorder too. Um, that really are obsessed with certain things and find the forbidden, acting out in the forbidden, like the forbidden fruit. They find it very stimulating, right? And he had an obsession with the forbidden. That's why he jumped out of psychology, I believe, and jumped into criminal justice and was very interested in, criminal behavior to the point where he was going for a doctorate and, met and interviewed all these other criminals trying to get information on how they felt, how they acted, what they did, how they got caught, how they got away with it, but really trying to gauge how they felt. Because, see, that's something that has evaded him, it seems, all his life. And, being autistic would certainly underline that, underscore that. But also, too, you know, as I said, the vast majority of people that are autistic and on the spectrum aren't going to hurt anybody.
Right.
Whoever did this is a mass murderer. He chopped up all these people. It
Yeah.
started with the two blondes, but then it went, down pretty quickly and downstairs and two other people. chopped up as well.
Right.
So yeah, but what I'm talking about is the obsession, and we know that a lot of these violent sexual predators are very obsessed with certain types of people. Like Bundy was, obsessed with girls with really dark hair, and this guy seems to be obsessed with, blondes. And if he is in fact the killer, the and what's interesting too is that his mother actually had some concerns about the death penalty and Ted Bundy. It's pretty ironic, isn't it?
Yes.
When you boil it all down, deep dive it.
Right. Well,
I,
the interesting thing is too, and I think that I think I remember seeing this, Chris McDonough brought this out on his show, that not about Bundy, but the interesting thing is that, Bundy goes into a sorority home, his last, you know, goes through there and does mass killings and injuring people. And he chose a sorority house too. I mean, it is a sorority house, even though he might have been targeting, one person in particular. The whole, they're just ideas that are close to each other. And he also kind of went to college. I mean, I don't think Bundy went to where he went to college, but he went to college in Washington, right?
yeah, correct.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, and it was not a sorority house, but it had at least I don't know the name of it as being a sorority house, but it was a party house. I mean, it was a lot of people.
Yes, that's kind of what I mean. I mean, yeah, I mean, sorority girls lived there. It
Oh
wasn't,
yeah, oh,
it wasn't
and
it wasn't I'm
Ethan,
sorry, yeah, it wasn't an official sorority house, but sorority girls lived there.
yeah, and Ethan was in a sorority too, wasn't
Yes.
he? I think so. I'm
Yeah.
not sure.
Right.
God bless them. Our condolences to the families.
You
You know,
you know, I was gonna, if I could just say this, I don't know if this was out there, and I don't know if this is true or not, but he was said to have been following Maddie on Instagram. So you talk about obsessing, I mean, he can just look at picture upon picture and fantasize forever.
yeah, Pam. I mean, big time. When you talk about the obsession and you talk about watching them, I think this is a big piece of it. I
Mhm.
think this is gives them a lot of sexual stimulation and sexual excitement, which is, again, extremely stimulating. And
Mhm.
I think he could have seen them on Instagram or he could have seen them wherever. I
Sure.
really, really believe that. I think that if everything is true, that he could have spent a lot of time outside in the back, just looking
Driving
at
around.
those windows and seeing two young, beautiful girls,
Sure.
in various stages of dress and undress. I mean, I think there's much more to him being around, not just going for a ride every night or something like that to look at the stars on a very deep, dark drive down a unlit road.
Right, exactly.
Is there anything else you want to bring up, Pam, before we close?
Well, I kind of wanted to just sort of like you had mentioned before, the story about, the girl that he knew in middle school. I mean, and the reason I'm bringing this up again is because supposedly that was his first, crush. And he
Right,
like,
right, right, right. First
but
crush.
he pined for her, you know what I mean? According to the article that I read, he pined for her. So he wouldn't leave her alone. I mean, he was writing her love letters and until she finally told him after a long time to buzz off. So she
Mhm.
just sort of like completely cut him off. And then she went on to high school and became a big cheerleader. So I'm kind of bringing this reference back to if his target, and if it's him, if this target was Maddie, and if he did sort of indirectly meet her somewhere, right? And she had a little bit of a snarky personality. So if he was bugging her, she could have told him to buzz off too. And, then the whole thing that happened before could have happened again, like, follows her on Instagram, tries to message her, you know what I mean? That's not working, riding around the house. I mean, that kind of thing, going back to the obsession until
Yeah,
it eventually, builds up. So,
absolutely. It could have that obsession towards blondes definitely could have taken him right through,
yeah,
and then the rage continued to build, internal rage, and then it became volcanic, violent rage, in the house. They're all possibilities if he's the guy,
right.
no question about it. The other thing I want to do is I want to take a look at what you brought up about this girl early on. She was younger. This was younger in his life, younger years. Both of them were younger, and so this goes back a number of years. Is where I'm going with it. But still, in all, that anger could have built up, and rage and humiliation and hurt and pain and everything could have built up over the years. And he really didn't seem to do well with females pretty much after that either. It just didn't seem to work out for him with whoever. I think he tried to date a couple of women, but it doesn't seem
He
like.
he met somebody on Tinder too that didn't go well either. I think
Oh, is
she
that
faked,
true? Okay.
remember she faked like he was acting very, and when I say inappropriate, I don't mean sexually, but he was being odd, kind of telling her she had good childbearing hips. Do you remember
Yeah,
that?
birthing hips.
Birthing hips, yeah. And and he was trying to tickle her or something, and she got uncomfortable, so she pretended to throw up in the bathroom, which, kind of repulsed him, so he kind of left. But yeah, so it just goes to show his awkwardness again. He just didn't know how to act around a young girl,
Yeah, and certainly autism, could have, just continued to, progress as he got older, which he usually does, and
John,
that's part of it.
going back to the DNA though, before we what about the DNA on the knife sheath?
Well, the DNA on the knife sheet, I think, is solid.
Okay.
I think it's solid. I think whoever did the killings, and he's the major suspect here, if he is the one that did the killings, just didn't think it over. Just didn't. It was just too, because when you have a knife sheet, I mean, you just flip that button, pull that knife out. You don't give it a second thought. Then you
Right.
forget about it. I mean, it becomes like second nature. So he may have been a real cleaning kind of freak, whoever did this murder, and really be obsessed with cleaning, but didn't think about the button. Just thought about wiping down the night sheet, wearing gloves, making sure he didn't touch anything, maybe sweeping, vacuuming up after he was done, that kind of thing. But he and to think about it, without that DNA being there, pretty good job, pretty perfect crime, if you will, because they have to put him in that house to kill those kids, you know,
But
and
the fact that the sheath was actually part of the murder scene, like when they went in there, that was, I mean, they don't, the defense doesn't have any what's the word I'm looking for? They don't have any case here in terms of like them uploading that stuff into, the DNA into GEDmatch, right? Because isn't it like fair game if it's part of a murder scene?
that's the way I see it, because we've got a psycho killer running loose on a campus of young people. Okay, and
Mm.
we've got a mass killer You know, at this point, he's a mass killer. And he's, you know, killed 4 people, 4 kids. And the only evidence we really have that can tie him to the house is that DNA. So
Right.
regardless of who he is, where he is, how they get it, whatever happens, like the one judge said twice on Sunday, you know,
Mhm.
you've got a mass murderer running loose. Okay. I mean, this is psycho killer time.
Right.
Whatever it takes, you got to bring this guy down. So yeah, I don't think the defense has a shot in hell here. Try to
Yeah.
keep that out. I mean, really. Yeah, I really don't. But we'll see. Stranger things have happened, right? And we'll keep talking about it and keep everybody posted. You know, at this point, I want to thank you, Pam. Is there anything else you'd like to say?
No, that's it, John. I think we covered everything.
We did, and I want to thank you so much for being here. I want to thank you so much for your feedback. Thank you so much for your research. Always appreciate it. You did a great job, and you know we got some interesting tidbits out of this, right? And
Okay.
you know, hopefully, you know, we'll get to August sooner or later, and we'll see what the trial produces, right?
Mhm.
I can't wait.
Yeah.
I can't wait to see how what his excuses, what Bryan Kohberger's excuses on how his DNA ended up on that knife sheet. I want to hear that.
Right.
That I can't wait for. That I can't wait for. So and at this point in time, I want to thank all our viewers for allowing us into your home. We can't thank you enough. Um, Also, too, we'll put a link up there for Pam's investigating and research, and there'll be a link up there that'll take you to the original girl, blonde girl that Bryan Kohberger started off with. Is that correct, Pam?
Mhm.
Yeah, so
Yeah,
there'll
the
be a
girl
link
from
to an
Minnesota.
article on her, and then
Right.
you can read it, and then you can think about if there was progression or not from there, or obsession and fantasy, right? So to our viewers and everybody in our audience, thank you so much. We appreciate you. Most importantly, take care of yourself. We live in a very violent world. And until next time, and we see you, God bless, and thank you again so much. Have a nice
Thank
day.